The 2026 US Open this year gave us a lot of things to talk about, from conditions of the course, the competitors, drama going around in the fans, and a lot more. It is going to be, at the very least, a very memorable tournament for all of us, but there's also a lot that I think is worth talking about, and so today, let's get into it a little bit here at Rolu Golf. Alrighty, as you can see, Windham Clark just won the 2026 US Open in front of us. I recorded that intro a second earlier, but I needed to sit down here and talk about this entire tournament because it's been one of the most maybe controversial that I have seen in my lifetime, and it's also probably been one of the ones that I've had the most fun actually watching. But I'm going to get into that in a little bit because I think there's so much to this story here that I want to cover everything and more than just Windham going out there and winning, which is probably like the least popular thing that could have happened. But that's okay. Sorry, I'm messing with the audio right now. And I'm going to do a little bit less editing here, though I will overlay some things that I forget to talk about. But there's just been so much going on for a guy that is probably the most hated guy in golf right now, or at least it looks like that today, which was wild. I think that's the right place to start here for it being such a large portion of the Sunday broadcast, because I think there's a lot of good things that happen for a lot of the other broadcasts throughout the week. This was the largest piece of it, though, that everyone was saying get in the bunker every time Windham got anywhere close to hitting the ball. A lot of people got thrown out because they were talking in his backswing or before he swung. And, everybody knows what he's done at Oakmont, just not being that popular of a player before that, either when he won the 2022, it was 2023 US Open in Los Angeles, and then coming here and doing this, like, yes, it's a good turnaround, and I'm happy for the guy, but I don't really like him either, and I think there's a lot that we saw this week that kind of reaffirmed that, even though I think for another player, seeing them deal with what the fans at Shinnecock were doing to him could have made a martyr out of him, where he gets all this support and backing because they're seeing what's happening to this guy. I don't really think that happened, but I also don't think that's the only story here. I think a big story is how good Windham played. He got really lucky, and that's been a very big conversation throughout this entire tournament. But I want to get into the broadcast a little bit here, because there was some rather frustrating things, right? We saw a lot of people talk about, here's one quote about somebody who was in the stands actually watching the whole thing unfold here, talking about how the fans didn't stink, but the way the broadcast was set up, where so many of the guys went off so late, the tournament's, it's what time is it? It's almost 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so that's not that bad. It went a little bit faster today, but yesterday was very quiet when Windham Clark was finishing up, because all the fans were following Rory and Scotty, and they had teed off at like 3 p.m., and it was going so late. That's just not frustrating. That doesn't create a good product, and I actually think I enjoyed watching the most golf probably Thursday, Friday, and Saturday morning, where I could watch the featured groups. And another thing about those featured groups is that they have significantly less advertisements, even on Peacock, where you're paying for that product. Normally, there's a little bit less ads than other streaming services that might be free or cheaper or whatever. No Laying Up pointed this out to about 5 golf shots shown in the last 15 minutes. The advertisements, especially in the early parts of this tournament of Sunday, was just fraudulent. Like, it was so annoying. And like, I get it. Look, I'm a YouTuber. There are ads in my videos that YouTube puts up. I put up sponsors in my videos. I did in the last one, in the post game of the last 2 rounds. And so I understand the frustration. And I'm also a perpetrator of it. But it really firmly felt like NBC was backloading all of the advertisements so that they could give the meat of the tournament, where everyone would be watching in theory, right? In theory, it's because Windham Clark won by a decent margin and it wasn't that intense. Definitely did not allow for too much viewership, and I would get behind this Sunday viewership being pretty poor in terms of US Open viewership since probably 2020. That being said, I think it was a good broadcast. I actually really, really did enjoy watching a lot of the golf this week. I watched a ton Thursday, Friday, and Saturday morning. It was really cool seeing them go out Thursday and the difficulties. Yes, it was frustrating that the afternoon morning wave with guys like Windham Clark, Bryson, Matty Fitz, Dustin Johnson, they got a much easier draw. because they were able to go out there and play a much easier course on Thursday and a little bit easier on Friday as well, which then, I don't know if that's true on Friday, but it helped them get this lead. But it didn't feed Windham, and that's not the reason he won. I think a lot of people talk about that and saying he got this advantage there. That's not why he won at all, because nobody else around him, of those 77 other players that played on that exact same schedule as him, got anywhere close to him. What happened to Dustin Johnson, who was tied up there with him on that same day where the conditions were easy? What happened to Bryson DeChambeau, who was playing really well and was in a similar position as Clark this week? You know what I'm saying? So that's not where he won. I think there's a much bigger argument and frustration that people can have with the fact that he was getting really lucky bounces, or at least it looked like that so much. Now, I watched a lot of featured group coverage, which meant that I saw a lot more of guys' rounds than is normally shown on the broadcast. Wyndham's whole round was shown on the broadcast because he was leading the tournament. A lot of guys were getting were getting good breaks or decent breaks pretty often. Yes, some guys were getting screwed a lot, but I saw Rory bounce out of the rough a billion times, right? And I saw that happen fairly often for a lot of other guys, where even Koiven and Miles Russell were getting a little bit of that as well Saturday morning, and then even today as well. That's something you see when you see all these guys playing. You see much more of their round. But because we were only seeing a lot of Clark's round, basically, we were seeing him get advantaged by that a little bit more than normal. Now, yeah, there's some rule stuff with him dropping the ball and picking it up. Those are the rules, right? You can be frustrated at the rules, but I think if that's happening to Scottie Scheffler, if that's happening to Rory McIlroy, and they're winning this tournament, this conversation is a little bit quieter. And so I don't really care that much about that at all. I get frustrated that there wasn't as much competition, but that's because the guys were not as good as Windham Clark was this week. I was watching Rory this morning thinking maybe he did something special. Same thing with Scottie. They could come back and figure it out. Rory sucked today. He was terrible. Was really, really poor. It was just not making putts, but his ball striking was terrible. He was putting himself in really good positions with his driver, and he wasn't doing that all the time, but he was giving himself, 100 yards in on very difficult holes and then pulling his wedge shots. That should never, ever happen of somebody's caliber like that. And we make all this conversation about Bryson. I'm going to cut him some slack. That same thing was happening to Rory today. Rory was off his game completely this week, and the fact that he was even remotely close gives a lot of credit to his putting those first couple of days, because he was putting ridiculous and saving par all over the place. You need to do that at the U.S. Open, and that's what happened. I also want to give a lot of credit to the course. I liked it. I really enjoyed it. I think it was a unique layout for a U.S. Open, where you don't see that kind of link style course. Scottie pointed out earlier this week that it's not really link style because the greens are so much harder. They're a little bit more of that Donald Ross turtleback-esque green where you're going to run off a lot, and that's not necessarily a feature as often with the turf and just the setup of the course in the UK, while this link style course had that. I enjoyed watching it. I thought it played really difficult. Everybody's complaining, saying they want a really difficult course, and we got it. And I really enjoyed it. I think so many people are downplaying Shinnecock just because Windham Clark won, and that's not. I don't think that deserves to be the case. I also think the USGA did a pretty they did their best setting it up. I'm not twerking for the USGA either. I have a critical video about the way the handicap system works going up there. And if you guys have problems with it and you have a handicap, I get it, because you pay $60 a year, sometimes more if you have a country club or whatever, to basically put on those tournaments for the USGA. And so your money is directly going to that. So I understand that frustration and everything. And you have the right to feel that way. I thought it was a cool course, and I got into the history beforehand. That probably got me a little bit more excited with it, but the broadcast also didn't do its best job, especially on Sunday, at displaying it. And that was one of my biggest frustrations, that I just think the broadcasts sucked today. Not only were there a bunch of ads, and then Windham Clark was ahead by $1 billion, and guys were not playing well, and so there's not like you could create any excitement earlier in the day, but the featured groups were terrible choices. It was like Corey Connors and Keegan Bradley and some other guys like Neil Shipley, who's barely made a cut this season. He has no right being on a featured group coverage when guys like Miles Russell and Jackson Koiven are on that featured group coverage. We saw that yesterday morning, and it was so cool watching these kids go out there and play. They did it again. Koiven was, I'm pretty sure Cowan ended at 6 under as well, or 6 over, and so they both were the the Low-Am, and that's great to see. Miles Russell was right up there and then walked with his dad, too. I threw that video in the intro as his caddy. Incredible. For Father's Day, by the way, happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. I wasn't able to be with my dad, but I have a feeling he's watching this. Happy birthday, Dad. Happy birthday, Dad. Happy Father's Day, Dad. That was so special and so nice. And we only saw it on the main coverage because there was no featured group coverage. I love watching those guys go out there and play. I couldn't care less about Keegan Bradley and Corey Connors. And I don't know, maybe that's different in Canada. I have a feeling it's not, though. I know I got some of you guys in the comments. Tell me if I'm wrong. It was just the wrong way to go about it. And when you have a tournament with a guy who's just not interesting enough, you really have to latch on to those guys that are interesting, right? Tell stories about their rounds. Tell stories about the course. Show iconic shots. That happened a little bit this week, but it also just felt very lackluster. And it's a lot going to have to do with Windham. And I think reminding you guys that a lot of people's reactions to this course is going to be by the fact that Windham won, but I don't care about the opinion saying that Windham wasn't good enough or he got lucky or whatever. I think he was by far the best out there by a substantial margin. I got a feel for Sam Burns too. He played great, but here's some data golf stuff showing you guys everybody's stats for the week. Hopefully you guys can see this all right. If you're on your phone, I do apologize. Windham Clark was so much better than everybody else for the entire tournament. Not only, right, was he like third or fifth in strokes gained putting, and that actually got worse. He was, I think, third up until, third or second up until a few, like 20 minutes ago because he missed those final putts at the end there. But he was able to pull it together, bro, and just his game was so well-rounded. His ball striking was unbelievable, and he made those really, really long putts, not only to keep him in the game, but to lock everybody out, right? And it doesn't just have to do with the fact that he was so low early on. Like, he played great, and it's wild when you look at these are his stats in US Opens or in majors over the past few years. He's been garbage. He has been garbage in majors for his entire career, basically. It's kind of similar to an argument I made about Bryson, where Bryson has not been good historically in especially the Masters, but kind of in majors, but bar the past 2 years. And so him not playing well is more, it shows more of a returning to the mean of how he actually performs than normal. But this is ridiculous. Like, Windham Clark being a two-time major champion just feels, I don't know if it feels wrong, but it feels wild that he's in that group with Justin Thomas and Colin Morikawa and Xander Schauffele. But maybe it's fair, whatever. I want to take a minute here to kind of like talk about why it's entirely justified for people to hate Windham Clark. I was just watching him all day, and I kept seeing people talk about it on Twitter about how, he's going to become a martyr, how he's going to get people to support him and get behind him because everybody is cheering against him, and it's a little too much, and it definitely was too much, but they're the New York fans, and realistically, Windham is one of the most hateable players on tour. It's not like it's this fabricated U.S. versus England stuff that is all around Matt Fitzpatrick earlier in the season when he kept winning. It happened to him everywhere. It was happening at the Players. It was happening when I think it was the RBC Heritage when he was up there with Scotty in the playoff. I think it was. And he handled it so well. He became so likable to me, and I've always liked him. I think I enjoy the English fans. I'm a big soccer football guy, so I think that partially feeds into it. But I think also watching him like smile and laugh and give it back to the American fans that were giving him crap for no real reason, just because of the fact that he's English, was fun, and it makes him so likable, and like talking back to them and giving it back to them. Windham Clark is kind of a robot, and he's not likable at all. His MO was clearly today that he's going to go and ignore it all. And I guess it worked. He didn't have a great round, but he was under a ton of pressure, right? And he didn't play great yesterday either. So it's like not like he had his best golf, and he still figured it out and won a major. So I'm not going to criticize him for the way he played, but I am going to criticize him for like saying that he might win back some fans. I don't know what would have won back fans besides the fact that you just played good golf, and just playing good golf is not enough to win back fans. We saw that with Bryson before he started his YouTube channel. He was not likable at all, even when he was winning. at all. Nobody cared about him. The only reason he became likable was because people learned a little bit more about him and began to understand a little bit more about his personality. But that is not happening with Windham. We are continuing to see very small glimpses of him, and a lot of it is insufferable. He's dropping his club with a 4-shot lead over his head, right? He looks, excuse me, visibly very frustrated, and all the while he's like ignoring the fans. He's not smiling. He's not looking like he's having a good time. He's not inspiring me, right, as a pundit to get behind him and to be excited by what he is doing at all. And that's like, okay. It's okay to have a villain. Not everybody has to be liked. And I do know that he has been dealing with a lot, right, and suffering. He probably is suffering, like, mentally. Like, this seemed like it weighed on him a lot. And I feel bad for him for that situation, but it's also, he's feeding into it just by simply the fact that he's not being personable in any way and is looking like a robot all the while. Like, it's not like when Tiger looked like a robot, it was like he was already so likable for so many people. A lot of people hate him for whatever reason, but realistically, he had support behind him. Windham never really had any, or hasn't had any. And no amount of the commentators trying to say otherwise or remind me of the difficulties that he struggled with is going to change that, because I see the person that he looks like he is in these on the tour. And I think it's up to him to go out there and change that and show the world some other version of himself. Show that you can be silly, that you can be fun, or that you're suffering, that you're having a hard time, right? That you're a human being. But instead, he looks more and more robotic. And like, it was nice to see him get his fist pumps in and everything. But again, it seemed like none of it was like a rallying cry. It was more of like, I don't even know. I've been going on a little bit about that. But the main point is, I think this was a better tournament than I think people are going to remember it as. But it's going to be memorable because it was frustrating. There was a lot of drama with the setup from Shinnecock and the USGA and the course. You know, some people were very upset about it. I actually really enjoyed it. I think it's one of the top 5. It founded the USGA in 1893 or 1906. I think it was 95. I don't know. I remember what year it was, but it was one of the top 5 or the founding 5 courses of it. And obviously it's hosted so many US Opens, but I also feel like it could have used a really special US Open. Like, if Windham Clark didn't exist today, and it was Sam Burns, Tom Kim, and Scotty Scheffler, 2 of them on their birthday. Sam Burns, a very easy to get behind, gentlemanly character, multiple time winner on the PGA Tour, always in contention, always up there, always around, and just seems to be a good dude. Tom Kim, hilarious. Scotty Scheffler becoming this hungry, manic, exciting version of himself as well. It would have been so special, and it's a little upsetting that we missed out on something that could have been that cool and that fun to watch, but realistically, I do think it was a good product. I do think it was, considering it was a Windham Clark win, realistically, I don't think it's going to do well viewership-wise. I think there's going to be a lot more complaints than we are going to see people that loved it, and that's fair, honestly. I didn't love it at all, but I actually think I had more fun this year than at Oakmont, because I don't know why. I just vividly remember not being that fond of what happened at Oakmont. I think I was also very rushed that day because I had a big drive afterwards. But in my opinion, this was probably above Oakmont, below the 2024 U.S. Open at Pinehurst. But I feel like Pinehurst it's unfair. Pinehurst is like the perfect U.S. Open venue, and I don't think it gets close. Obviously, Oakmont was unbelievable as well, but yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know if I'm out of place here. I really think I'm being very generous, honestly, to Windham Clark and to a lot of places here. But I'm going to be honest, because I kind of enjoyed the tournament overall, even though it was Windham Clark winning. I know a lot of you guys didn't, but let me know. Where does this rank in your last 3 U.S. Opens or majors altogether so far this season? I think it's pretty close with the PGA Championship, but because of the Sunday at the PGA, I'm going to put this below it. So it's actually I think that's fair. Masters with Rory winning, Aaron Rai, PGA, Windham Clark, the U.S. Open. But Not because it was terrible, just because the Sunday wasn't as special as either of those two. There was no battle. I think the broadcast could have done significantly better. We can always say that. Golf is just such a hard sport to broadcast. You can understand that a little bit. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys for, supporting the channel and everything. And if you did enjoy this video, make sure you subscribe, because that's like the only way. Subscribe and turn on notifications. That's the only way you can like definitely see my videos. The algorithm's random sometimes. But again, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.